Hello, and welcome to the first episode of Cougar Cast, the podcast all about RBMS. I'm your host, Joshua Grimes, and on this episode, we have an interview with Todd Washburn. Mr. Washburn was the first principal of RBMS when it opened back in 2000, and is still in education today. So let's get into the interview. I'll just start with the questions. What made you want to be in education?
I was drawn to education because I really enjoyed working with students and having an impact on their lives. I had a coaching athletics background and really enjoyed coaching and that part of it. And so I started as a teacher coach and loved teaching in the classroom and then having the opportunity to build relationships with students outside the classroom through athletics and really encourage and motivate students to get their absolute best out of themselves, both in the classroom and then also on the athletics fields.
Mm-hmm. And when and where did you start in education?
So I started, this is my 31st year in education, but I started back in 1991, and so that was actually in El Paso, Texas. So I'm from Ohio originally, but my wife and I got married and moved to El Paso, and so I taught and coached there in 1991 before coming to Leander, I believe, in 1995.
So what was it like to open RBMS and being the first principal?
It was one of my most memorable times in education. What was unique about it was, if you can believe it or not, Leander at the time only had two middle schools, Leander Middle School and Cedar Park Middle School. And so when I was selected to open Running Brushy, what was great about it was I had the opportunity, even while the school was being built, to meet with teachers and students from both Leander Middle School and Cedar Park Middle School to really talk about what we wanted Running Brushy to look like. And so I had a lot of focus groups where I had tons of input from teachers and students on everything from the school colors to the school mascot, fight song, how we wanted to set up the school, what we believed in. And so that was a lot of fun to have that opportunity to really collaborate with the students and teachers on really creating Running Brushy from the ground up.
So you had a hand in the construction, you'd say?
Yeah, the building was designed, but really got to have some input on just some of the smaller things, some of the color designs, and just the layout. And interesting, Cougar Country Drive, I actually named that street as well because they were still constructing it, or Cougar Country Drive, I think it is.
Mm-hmm.
And so they asked me what I wanted it to be named, and I wanted it to be named as part of the mascot, since that road kind of actually goes up to the field also.
So as you said, there was a school song written about when the school was open. Would you know much about that? Because it's not, I don't believe it's here anymore.
The fight song, and so actually, and Mr. Rose might be able to help you out with connecting. Curtis Locklear, who at the time worked in Leander, he was an elementary principal at Blockhouse Creek. He was very artistic and creative, and so he actually helped develop the school song, and we helped select the fight song, which is after the University of Michigan, kind of, right?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
You're testing my memory, Josh. It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a while. And how long were you the principal at RBMS?
I was the principal at RBMS. This is a trick question, but for 3.5 years. But part of that half year was actually I started, I believe, in February to onboard and start recruiting teachers and start working with students prior to the school opening. And so what I feel like was a really unique opportunity I had was when I opened Running Brushy, I was the principal there for the 6th graders when they were in 6th grade, 7th grade, and 8th grade. And then when they moved to the high school, I actually became the principal at Leander High School. And so I was there for 5 years, so I had the opportunity to, good or bad, from the students' perspective, I was some of those students' principals, from sixth grade all the way through their senior year. And so I really treasured those relationships that I had with those students, to see them mature all the way from sixth grade to walking across the stage. So I feel like that's a really special, unique opportunity I had, the opportunity to be with those students over that time period.
So you had those students for a long time.
Right.
So after RBMS, you became a principal at Leander High School?
That's correct.
And you were there for 5 years?
Yes.
And after Leander High School, where did you go?
Well, I ended up moving into central office in Leander, so I was over secondary curriculum for about 8 years in Leander. So I was over all the middle school and high school campuses, and worked with curriculum and instruction.
Mm-hmm. And how is that different from being like a principal?
So when you look at a central office position, it's different in that you don't have that day-to-day contact with students and teachers like you do being on the campus, and but you're looking at a more global picture. So instead of just focusing on what was happening at Running Brushy or Leander High School, I had to kind of look from a global perspective across all of our middle schools, all of our high schools, and looking at programs and how do we ensure that the instruction is strong across all campuses. Mm-hmm. And how do we provide resources and support for each of those campuses who might have unique needs.
So how has working in like an administrative role changed since 2000?
So the obvious answer is you have things that weren't in place in 2000. One of the most challenging, I would say, particularly for everyone, and not just administration, but anyone in education, has been COVID over these last 19, 20 months. To what it's caused us to rethink and put systems in place that we never had to do before, going directly to remote learning from ground zero up to 100% was extremely challenging for all teachers and administrators, and looking at processes too to keep students and teachers safe during that pandemic time, which we're still working through as well, right, Josh?
Yeah, I read that you were the assistant principal for Liberty Hill. Are you still that, or?
Oh, so from I was 8 years in Leander, and then from there I went to be an assistant superintendent in Eanes ISD, which is Westlake. Do you know where that is?
Yeah.
So I was there for 4 years. I was a superintendent actually in Dripping Springs for a year, and then right now I'm an assistant superintendent in Liberty Hill ISD.
How is like superintendent different than is it just like a much more broader scale as well?
Broader scale, and it I support curriculum instruction, but there are people that are actually facilitating more the day-to-day and working directly with teachers. I also am involved with broader picture things like operational type things, such as growth. I was talking to Mr. Rose, and Liberty Hill is actually right about the place Leander was about 25 years ago, and so we're opening a lot of new campuses. We just opened another middle school in Liberty Hill, and so it was kind of unique that I could, visit with the the principal who was opening that school, since I had experienced that myself 20 years ago at Running Brushy, and kind of share some insights and lessons I learned through that process with him. So that's been really exciting to kind of go back to some of the things that happened 20 years ago and share that with some of our principals.
Yeah, and so you were saying the district was a lot smaller 20 years ago, and
Absolutely.
In what ways would you say the development's changed in the areas?
Well, I think the challenge is your district grows. When I first started in Leander, there was one high school, there was one middle school, a sixth grade center, and 5 elementary schools. And so one of the things that I think Leander's done an outstanding job with is, as you grow, you want to make sure you still maintain that culture. some of those core values and beliefs. Putting students first, I think, has always been a priority in Leander. I think even though it's grown up to 40,000 students from about 6,000 or 7,000, I still see that personal touch, that compassion and passion for students, and making decisions based on students. The Leander learning model, I was a part of that as well, and I know that still is a big part of the culture and how Leander operates.
Do you know what you want to do, like, in the future for education, like, or do you not know yet?
What do you mean when I grow up, Josh?
Like, I guess, like, you could move on, like, if you moved on to superintendent, or I don't know. Like,
yeah, in my role right now, or where I'm at from education, I've been blessed to have, I've done everything, like I said, from teaching, coaching, to being an assistant principal at middle and high school, to being a principal at middle school and high school. Like you said, multiple central office positions. My goal right now is just to continue to be, I'm not so worried about the position, but to be able to have a positive impact and influence on education as a whole, and to really help support our teachers and our principals to do their absolute best by our students and prepare our students for the future.
so I believe that's it. But thank you very much, Mr. Washburn.
Josh, you're lucky. I've known Mr. Rose for a long time, and he's one of the best principals I've ever been around, so you guys are in great hands.
Thank you very much, Mr. Washburn.
All right, thank you, Josh. I enjoyed going down memory lane with you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Cougar Cast. Until next time.